Yes, I'm going to speak English today. But I hope this is not a problem. If it is a problem, just raise your hand and we will immediately speak only Spanish. Okay? Good. No one's raising their hand yet, so humor in healthcare. I can imagine, somebody's raising their hand already? I can imagine that everyone in this room remembers a time when it was impossible to put those two words, humor and healthcare, in the same sentence. And today, humor and healthcare, it's an idea worth sharing. I would like to start with a personal experience I had here in the Czech Republic about 15 years ago. I had just started presenting this idea of humor in healthcare at healthcare conferences, and I was running all over the country like a madman, visiting hospitals as a clown. It was one of my studies was clowning. I studied at the first accredited clown school in America. Like I said, it's not my fault. So I was presenting this idea in hospitals and children's wards all over the country. And in this one hospital, I came into the hospital, and the first thing I would do was have a consultation with the staff to get some basic information on the patients that were there and that would help me in my work. And so I was talking with the doctor in the oncology ward of this hospital, and he was telling me things I needed to know. And then he said, oh, and there's Melissa in room 4. I changed her name, by the way. There's Melissa in room 4. But unfortunately, the therapy did not work, and she's in the last stages of the disease, and her bodily functions are shutting down. So she cannot see anymore, and I doubt that she would even know if you were present or not. So it probably doesn't really make sense to visit her. And I said, well, can I try? And he said, yeah, of course. So I continued my visit to the oncology ward. There were actually 2 wards, younger children and older children. And so 3-4 hours later, I was left with one room left. That was room number 4 and Melissa. So I knocked on the door. No answer. I opened the door slightly and asked if I could come in. I saw Melissa laying in bed, staring blindly at the ceiling. She had lost all her hair through treatment. Her mother was sitting next to her, wringing her hands, obviously in a lot of stress. So I asked if I could come in, and her mother said yes. So I came in and I started clowning for Melissa. Because she didn't see, I was forced to use sounds. So one of the things that happened, and I never knew what was going to happen, but we found a bird in the room. Melissa liked that. So we decided that we should catch this bird, and it was Melissa's idea to put it out the window. So I'm racing around the room, trying to catch this bird. I did finally catch the bird. So I caught it under her bed and put it in a plastic bag and opened the window and let it fly. But then it flew right back in. So this went on, and we couldn't get rid of this bird. So finally, Melissa and she was really enjoying this. She was laughing, and we were having a very good time. And finally, we decided that the bird would live under her bed. So this was our decision together, and so the bird finally lived under Melissa's bed, and at the end I picked up my ukulele and I sang a little song about the bird that lived under Melissa's bed. And I left the room. I left the room with Melissa in bed, smiling, and it was a very nice atmosphere. As the door closed, the door opened immediately again, and her mother was chasing me into into the foyer of the hospital and trying to give me money, tears streaming down her face. Of course, I had to say no. I mean, what I just received in that room was worth all the money in the world. So I think that what happened in the room, actually, Melissa and I understood the game, and her mother was completely surprised. She probably saw this as maybe the last time she would see her daughter smile and laugh. I don't know, but she was very emotionally charged. So I went on my way. I was continually visiting hospitals all over the country. And so it took some time before I came back to this hospital. So it was, I don't know, how many weeks, a month, I don't know. I came back into the same oncology ward, and I was met with the doctor on duty, and he said, "Gary, do you remember Melissa in room 4? I said, "Yes." And I knew what was coming. I had lost patients many times. I knew what was coming. So I was half listening as the doctor was telling me that Melissa, after my visit, had turned 180 degrees. All of her bodily functions had returned. There was no trace of the illness, and they had sent her home. Now, I know what spontaneous remission means. I didn't see this necessarily as a cause of my visit. But that moment gave me the resolve to continue with this work. And today, here in the Czech Republic, there are 87 specially trained, certified health clowns visiting over 75 hospitals and institutions, at least on a regular basis, at least once or twice a week, up to 7 times a week. We make more than 3,500 visits a year here in the Czech Republic. In the meantime, I was honored to be able to open a project in Slovakia, and now I work with Red Noses Clown Doctors International, whose mission is to develop and to guide humor and healthcare projects worldwide. So one of the things we do is we've developed a certification process, a curriculum which involves all of the things that these specially trained artists need to know to do this work correctly. We have an international school of humor in Vienna where partners can come and get the best training in the world, because we believe that approaching this project in a professional manner is really what it takes. Just like other people working in healthcare, we see it as very important to put energy into the training process. Red Noses Clown Doctors is also advocating for child's rights, the right to play specifically. And we all know that play is an important part of the development process for children. And in hospitals, they also recognize this. So what you'll see in children's wards quite often are playrooms. But this is not inclusive for all children in the hospital. Consider children who must stay in bed. They are not allowed into the playroom. So that's where our clowns come in. They bring this atmosphere of play, the possibility to play, and the expertise to draw the children into this play mode right to the children's bedside. We work individually with children of all ages. They're especially trained to work with children of all ages. And we work individually with each child. What we do is use these hospital procedures and the environment, and we make fun of it. Nurses and doctors love it as well, believe me. And by doing this, we get around the mystique. If a child can laugh about a procedure, they will not be afraid of it. So our clowns are specially trained to work with children on an individual basis. And as you can see, they're very empathetic. So children's programs is the basis of our work, but we do work with other age groups. We have also a project, Circus Paziento, where we work an entire week with children in Seville without the clown nose, teaching circus arts and magic and music. These are things that children are readily interested in. And I believe that if we can awaken an interest in whatsoever, then we awaken an interest in life. And an interest in life is an integral part of the healthcare process. So Circus Paziento is a process where they learn something new, they become interested in things, and they become the stars at the end of the day. So we even have circus tents. This is a circus tent set up on the hospital grounds, which is very inviting for children in hospital. So they're the big stars of the show. Audience includes their parents, hospital staff, other children. Besides children, we also have developed projects working with the elderly. Because actually last year I reached retirement age. Hey, I do not want to be in an institution where there are not clowns visiting on a regular basis. So we've developed the humor for the early born. And quite often this is exactly what they need. They need to be brought back into life. It's a completely different method, and the clowns that do this project are specially trained specifically for this project. We use old costumes, 50-year-old costumes. We sing the old songs. A lot of it has to do with memory training. Picking mushrooms is very popular in the Czech Republic. So in the autumn, we would come in with a basket of mushrooms just to smell it, to remember. It's a beautiful project. And we have also many other projects. Caravan Orchestra is a special scenario built for the multiple handicapped children in institutions. And we have the Humor Baskets project, which for adults. I have seen magic work with this. I have seen waiting rooms in an adult oncology ward, and you can imagine what the atmosphere is like. And we've come in with these humor baskets, and the whole thing is changed into almost a Christmas atmosphere, where somebody says, oh, this is a great book, I read this, and somebody says, I read this, oh, let's change. And we had some real magic moments happen with this. And just lately, one of the last projects I was able to do here for the Zdravotní Clown project here and also the project in Slovakia was to introduce something I'd seen in Israel. And this is where clowns, specially trained for this, accompany children from the hospital ward to the operating theater. We call it NOS, na operační sál, to the operation room. What I've realized is there are specific stress moments in this process. And so the clowns are trained to interject humor at these stress moments. If you can imagine being a parent in the moment, this is not just for the children, but at this moment when your child is wheeled through the operation room and the doors close and you're left outside. Can you imagine what a stress moment that is? So the clowns are specially trained also to work with the parents in this situation. They may take the nose off and just be a human being when a human being is needed. When I introduced this project, I was met with some skepticism. But just after the pilot period of 3 months, I got nothing but positive feedback. And so we are expanding the project even further. Humor is an international thing. Here, Red Noses Clown Doctors International, we're invited to speak at conferences in Saudi Arabia. This is a picture taken in the hospital with the head of the pediatric ward. So, when I first started also helping to develop the project in Palestine, I thought, wow, clown is not an element in their culture. But they learned. I mean, they know. We found that they understood immediately and went with us wholeheartedly. We worked very closely with the hospital staff. This is something I find very important. How I see our work specifically is we are a complement to the fine work that the other hospital professionals are doing. And in that vein, I have also worked with medical students, teaching humor in healthcare as a communication tool, how to better a relationship with the patient. And I have worked with the Czech Association of Nurses to teach accredited seminars for nurses. Because I really believe, not that they are clowns, but they can use humor in their work. So the things we talk about are the types of humor relative to healthcare. We talk about the developmental stages of understanding humor in children. We talk about fear. We talk about focus. For instance, if I was to take a blood sample, the health professionals focus on their work, and that's normal. So if I'm to take a blood sample, may I? Just stay seated. The focus is here, where the procedure takes place, but that is not necessarily convenient for the patient. So what I do is introduce some other ideas. May I see your other hand? Just one finger? Yes? Just one finger? Yeah, so now I'm going to take a blood sample. Right? I'm going to take a blood sample. And your job is to make sure the bird stays flying. Yeah? So, you're going to keep it going. Okay, just about got it. Yeah. Thank you. Good job. So we do work together with the hospital staff. This is very important. And what's interesting is that now there are so many hospital wards which realize that a ward without humor intervention can't work. So things have changed that much in the last 15, 20 years. And what this tells us in the global picture is that healthcare is changing, that healthcare is becoming more humane and more aware of the psychosocial needs of the patients. And that is something to smile about. Thank you.